'Twas the morning before Christmas, when wake up in the tower. Wacko affixated Dot with a lingering glower. She interrupted his daily breakfast cappuccino with a plea to make her jogging, to which he'd said, no. It's too early, it's too cold, and I'm watching King of the Hill. If you want to run that bad, just go get on the treadmill. She begged and she whined, and she gave her best pout. She absolutely desperately wanted to go out. He couldn't argue all he wanted. It didn't matter. The point was moot. On a treadmill, no one would be able to see her adorable pink ink new jogging suit. It's not that she needed him. She could easily go alone. It's his company that she wanted, and not a chaperone. But he would have none of it. He staunchly refused, and had her attempts to persuade him were only leaving him amused. He'd already got himself comfy, set to enjoy his day off. He could just spend time with her later, so it was a total brush-off. "Why don't you ask Wacko to go with you?" exasperated Yakko finally said. Dot frowned with annoyance. "I would if that oaf wasn't still in bed. You know a little exercise wouldn't kill you," she said with a huff. She put her hands on her hips and waited for his rebuff. But Yakko didn't respond. He wasn't going to rise to her bait. He just knew the best way to get rid of his little sister was just to ignore her and wait. The tactic paid off, for it wasn't too long before she got bored and decided to move on. He said as she left, "Don't forget your cell phone." She could only roll her eyes. His fathering she'd long since outgrown. He may be the oldest, but he wasn't her dad. He'd best not forget that, or the consequences would be bad. Who does think he is? She asked herself peevishly. She was easily the most mature of the bunch. If he believed otherwise, then he believed foolishly. She'd headed out of the studio lot and on towards the Griffith Park. She would start a jog at the recreation lake and end it with the statue landmark. Sitting on a park bench halfway between the statue and the lake, sat down an out junkie by the name of Richard Blake. He was new to the addiction, and he hadn't rationed out his stash. Now he was out and withdrawal was so close. But he was unemployed and without any cash. He glanced up in time to see Dot rounding the bend. He grinned a little grin to himself. His money problems were about to end. He'd recognize her. He had been a fan of her show. And as a television celebrity, she must be rolling in the dough. He waited the last minute before blocking her path, startling her and cornering her beside the old stone bird bath. She had been annoyed by her brother's dismissal. She hadn't even seen Richard hiding there. Frightened and her fur began to bristle. She had been accosted by the fans before, but this guy gave her a bad vibe. And in such a deserted, isolated area, the fear welling up was hard to describe, and easily dwarfed her at his tall 6'8", and the way he was just looking at her made her feel look like jailbait. "Do exactly as I say, and this will be over real quick. But don't you dare scream. I don't want to have anything to do with anything drastic." Doc quickly glanced around for a means of escape, convinced by his word of choice that his intention was something violating. When he demanded was her money, she couldn't help but be relieved. This was only a mugging, a heck of a lot better than what she first believed. If not for one small problem, she would have had happily handed it all over, but she didn't have any money. She hadn't brought her wallet with her. "I don't have any money," she said with a tremble. "I was only going jogging and I didn't think I need..." Her fear was making him ramble. But I can give you my cell phone, and here, take my iPod." Furiously interrupted. "You're lying. Drop the facade. You're a freaking child celebrity by definition. That makes you rich. So shut up your yap and hand it over." What, you think I'm some kind of idiot, bitch? At absolute loss of what more she could possibly do, she dissolved into helpless tears. I don't know what else to tell you. She had to be lying, attempting to play him a fool, a celebrity without money. It all went against the rules. He had grabbed her by the throat and lifted her off the ground. He tightened his grip so she wouldn't make a sound. You must think you're real something with your money and your clothes, but I could tell you it's only luck that separates you from the hobos. Desperate for air, she began to kick and flail, but with his strong height and weight advantage, her efforts were doomed to fail. He saw her distress, but he was on a roll. He was sick and tired of those that felt they were better because of their bankroll. It's all the same with you rich Hollywood brats. The world gets handed to you on a plate. You think you're entitled to everything. But in the real world, you're just only dead weight. She had been able to speak. She would have been able to point out that she and her brothers had worked very hard for their living and had never once looked for a handout. She would have only mentioned how they were orphans and how to take care of each other. They never really had parents to take care of them. She reeled solely on her older brothers. But even if she had been able to say these things, it's doubtful it would have made a difference. She was only Richard's scapegoat now, a captive audience as he shouted his grievance. She had never wanted to see her brothers more when she did at that very moment. The thought of never seeing them again was the most unbelievable torment. What could they do without her? She wondered as she struggled for breath. She knew that Yakko would consider himself an important instrument in her death. If he would be blaming himself, of that she would be so sure. He would torment himself with the what-ifs. Was it something he'd be able to endure? She wished she never invited him along at all, just so he could avoid the guilt. Something like that hanging over his head. His spirit surely would wilt. And on Christmas no less. Could the timing be worse? Her brothers would never celebrate again. It would seem entirely too perverse. Richard was still ranting at her, about what she didn't know. All she could hear was her own heartbeat, which now was beginning to slow. It didn't hurt as much as she thought it would. It was the way worse at the beginning, but now her body and mostly have gone numb, and her peripheral vision was thinning. When she suddenly went limp, Richard was surprised. He had only meant to frighten her, not only caused her ultimately demise. But she was so small, and his grip was so strong. He was in a panic now. He knew what he had done wrong. He had checked for her breath, but was horrified to find none. He could attempt to reciculate, but instead he decided to run. He took a quick look around him to ensure that the coast was clear. If anyone had seen what he had just done, the repercussions would likely be severe. If it was all her own fault, if only she had just decided to obey. If she had just handed over the money, he would have let her be on her way. Before ditching the body, he decided to frisk her. Hey, he needed that cash. Why stop at just the murder? He reached into her pockets and around his hand and pawed, finding exactly what he had hoped to find: a razor, cell, and an iPod. He felt a little sick to his stomach after he had finished his search. She hadn't really had any money. His intelligence she hadn't been trying to besmirch. But there was no way to reverse it. What was all done was done. So he hid her body under some bushes, unconscionably walked out to the sun. There had been no witnesses, and no security cameras were around. He sold her iPod and phone on eBay, and a link back to him would never be found. He would have to keep his head down and just keep attention off of him. He'd just try and forget that dead little girl and learn not to attack on a whim. He smiled brightly to a passerby, half a mile down the trail. So far so good, he'd get off clean and never see the inside of jail. Yakko and Wacko back at the tower were starting to wonder about their sister, who had gone for several hours. I really hate it when she does this, Yakko muttered. As he hung up the phone, she often turned herself off when she wanted to be alone. He hated not being able to reach her. It drove him crazy to no end. It defeated the purpose of even giving her the phone. Another stress with what she had to contend. It was hard enough being a guardian when he himself was an only child. If only he wouldn't make it so hard sometimes. He had thought he'd just pick up the phone again and dialed. "Hi, you have reached the voicemails of Princess Angelina Contessa Louis." Wacko sighed and hung up again. "Could the network be down?" Wacko asked, as he played with the remains of a chewed ballpoint pen. "She's just messing with me," Yakko said with annoyance. "I wouldn't take her jogging. Now she's punishing me with annoyance." "What part of keep it in case of emergency? Is it so hard to understand? We need to be able to reach her." It was not an unreasonable command. "She is so in for it when she gets back here. I'll ground her, just watch. She won't leave home again for a year." He decided to give up this moment and still went to sit with his brother. Dot would eventually come back, and they would argue again about how he wasn't her father. Usually he and Dot got along wonderfully, but their relationship was incredibly close. But whenever he had pulled a rank on her, a heated confrontation usually rose. She could be the sweetest thing on the planet until you incurred her wrath. Nothing as innocent and cute as little Dot until she went on a warpath. She could be very expected at the moment and very clingy the next. Yakko figured it was just a girl thing, but quite often left him perplexed. What could trigger a fight tomorrow wouldn't necessarily do so today. It all depends on the variable moods, which seem to change with every weekday. But he loved her unconditionally, and of that he had no doubt, and had any fight they would have put end as soon as she gave that pout. When the phone finally sounded, he was confused for a time, because it wasn't his cell phone that was ringing. It was their landline. "I'll get it," the brothers shouted, as they both lunged towards the phone. Yakko easily got there first. "I never get to get it," Yakko said with a moan. Wacko smirked at his younger brother. Phone war was their custom, and Wacko was the slowest runner, made an easy victim. But Yakko's smile did not last long as the caller began to speak. His eyes went wide and his body went rigid. Wacko's curiosity was instantly piqued. "What's wrong?" he asked as Yakko's legs gave out, and his brother dropped to his knees. His expression was blank, but his eyes said a lot. "You're scaring me, Yakko, please." But this once in his life, Yakko had no words. His mind gone completely blank. Then a thought occurred to him which he desperately clung. Maybe this whole thing was just a horrible prank. "This isn't funny," he growled at the fake cop. "If you hurt her, I swear to God I'll—" But what if the officer said next caused him to stop? He was silent for a few moments before replying, saying, "I understand." He hung up the phone and sat very still, the weight of it all more he could withstand. By this time, Wacko was losing his mind. Yakko looked like a zombie and still wouldn't speak. He was desperate to know what could cause this effect, and why his brother's expression was so utterly bleak. "There has been an incident," he was finally able to say, but he could go no further, his face crumbling in dismay. "Is it Dot?" Wacko asked, already feeling the worst. Yakko could only nod as he fought back an emotional outburst. The drive to the morgue was silent, and in the car of the studio psychiatrist, Dr. Scratch and Sniff had been picked up quick to help, fortunate as he was the only human they'd grown to trust. But he would be left in the lobby when the brothers went for the viewing. This was observed for family only, some liability thing to keep people from singing. When she was laid down on the table, covered completely in a white sheet, the table was meant for a full-grown adult. The effect made her look especially peaked. The brothers clung to each other, dreading when the coroner would make a reveal. Hearing Dot was dead was one thing, but to see her would make it real. She was found in a bush by an old lady's dog. The CSI coroner was saying. Cause of death was asphyxia due to strangulation. He gestured to where she was laying. All we need is a positive ID and permission to perform an autopsy. I'm pretty sure the cause of death, but I like to perform a biopsy. Do they know who did it? Do they know why? Wacko asked softly, trying his hardest not to cry. We think it was a mugging. Her pockets were picked clean, and it's unlikely that we'll catch him, since there was no evidence at the scene. We're unlikely to find a fingerprint on the jogging suit made of velour, but I can try and match the bruise patterns on her neck. But how helpful will that be? I am unsure. He stepped back up to the table and took the edge off the sheet in his hands. He waited before he did it, allowing them to give command. When the brothers were at ready, they nodded, and when the coroner pulled back the sheet, where she was before them, clear as could be. The horrible truth sealed in concrete was now no denying it now. It was not some cruel, sick joke. Their little baby sister was really gone, and for a long moment nobody spoke. Yakko was the first to break down. Overcome by grief, he openly wept. Wacko withdrew into himself, feeling completely in debt. Yakko draped his arm over her and with his right hand and stroked her hair. The guilt was rising up inside of him, entirely too much to bear. If only he had gone with her. If only he had been there. He would have defended her with all that he was, and all he had was despair. He had been so outrageously selfish, blowing her off to watch some stupid show. All she wanted from him was attention, just a little one-on-one time, and he refused to go. He failed her as a brother and guardian. Was he ever used to her at all? And the one time she really needed him, and he had dropped the ball. I should have gone with her. She shouldn't have been alone. Thanks to me, we'll spend Christmas picking out a headstone. Wacko didn't speak, for he had nothing to say. Because he'd overslept, he missed out on saying anything at all to her today. Everything felt hazy, like it was some kind of nightmare, like the world was in slow motion, and he was the only one aware. As he watched his brother cry, he stroked her sister's hair. Wacko couldn't even think of anything they'd done to deserve this. It all seemed too terribly unfair. After giving them time to say their goodbyes, the coroner led them back out. He promised his best friend on find out who hurt her, but the odds of his success was obviously in doubt. They returned home to their tower and numbly looked out. She had presents under the tree and stocking on the mantel, reminders of her bound. Scratchy had offered to stay with them, but they had decided not to intrude. Despite it all, it was still in the night before Christmas, and he deserved his holiday to the brothers who had concluded. He had left a promise to check in tomorrow to see how the brothers were coping, which seemed pretty stupid. It was all pretty obvious that tomorrow would be filled with nothing but moping. They sat together on the couch, lost in each other's own thoughts, each wanting to be closer and to the other for comfort against the emotional onslaughts. They would probably never get closure, but what that was the way it was sometimes with the universe was often unpredictable, and acts of fate you couldn't prevent. It had never occurred to them that their brother-sister relationship could severe damage, that they have done no choice but to sit and await for the worst Christmas ever. Alright, my pretties, that was Twas the Worst Christmas Ever, written but Animaniacs, tragedy Christmas story written by ViridianVenus. This is an older story. I mean, this one came out like 18 years ago. And I do definitely do have to say was that it's a really amazing, well done story. I personally really enjoyable story. I can definitely say it was a good one. I mean, I will say that it is messed up of how, Dot passed away because she was strangled to death. And yeah, I definitely do have to say is that it was just an interesting concept. I personally really enjoyed this story. I mean, it's messed up, especially what happens. And I like how it is in the format of "Twas the Night Before Christmas," which I personally really like that. How it's in that sort of way. especially with how the story went out. So, I personally do have to say it's a pretty good story. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of messed up, but yeah, I mean, I cannot see this happening in an Animaniacs show. Oh, but I could see this happening in a Robot Chicken parody of them, which I can definitely see it being a parody for Robot Chicken. Now, if you guys know what Robot Chicken is, you probably get the idea. So, anyways, I guess with that being said and that being the case, I'm gonna sit here and say this is just simply my own personal opinion, and if you disagree with it, that's perfectly fine too. We're all entitled to our own opinions regarding these stories, and this is just simply my own personal thoughts. I'll give you guys a link to this story in case if you guys want to go check out this story for yourself. It's a pretty good story. So, ViridianVenus, if you're watching this, I definitely have to say you did a really awesome job with this story. I really hope that, you write more stories like this in the future, but like I said, it's kind of hard to say because, the offer hasn't been active in quite a few years. So it's really hard to say. So I guess with that being said, I'm going to give this story a 9 out of 10. Mainly because it was sad involving Dot dying. But, I mean, this is kind of what happens when you're alone. You never know what's going to happen. Like, you could get robbed, violated, and many other stuff that can happen to you. So this is why you don't want to go alone because, especially if you live in a dangerous area. So, yeah, that's kind of the risk you're taking if you're alone. But I guess with that being the case and with that being said, what did you guys personally think of this story? Did you all enjoy it? Did you all not? Also, what you have done personally to help make this story a lot better? For those who want to know, let me know what your thoughts are down in the comment section down below. I'm Shadow the Lion Queen. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and if you're new to my channel, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you're new. Ring the bell for notifications to when I upload, so that way you guys will not miss an upload. As always, if you guys want to go follow me on Blue Sky, follow me on Twitter, follow me on DeviantArt, and follow me on my backup channel known as Miss Dark Shigo, as links to those will be in the About page section, so you guys will not miss an upload. So, yeah, I guess with that being said, and with that being the case, I'm gonna sit here and say it's day right now that if you have anything else that you want to add to this, to what I just said, and if I'm missing something, please let me know what it is in the comments below. As always, I'll see you guys all in the next video. Peace out, and like always, roll the outro, because I'm out.
What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video, and I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as Miss Dark Shigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, stay pretty.